Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Blessings, good evening. As is usual, tonight we came together, chanted the recollections in praise of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and some other reflections. Every time you bring your mind to recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, even in a small way, it will reinforce your confidence, conviction in the Buddha, in the teachings, and brings up certain brightness of mind, certain positive energy, or even you could say a power of mind. Because recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha has a great uplifting effect on our mind. Sometimes very briefly, but sometimes it can be a cause for your mind to become very peaceful in a very deep, profound way quite quickly. It's particularly helpful as a way to calm the mind when we have stress, suffering, mental agitation of one kind or another. You think of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the noble ones, the Sangha. Already your mind is turning to something very peaceful and wise, and many other positive, wholesome qualities come to mind. The opposite of whatever it is that is making you agitated, not peaceful. Often our practice is as simple as that, bringing the mind away from getting stuck into the negative thoughts, the worries, the anguish, the frustrated desires, towards something that is better, purer, brighter, happier. Sometimes it's as simple as that. What you turn your mind to will improve your state of mind. Of course, the power of our conditioning, the mental defilements, greed, anger and delusion, fears and jealousies and worries, all of this will often re-emerge, sometimes very quickly, sometimes over time, pulls the mind down again, pulls the mind back to more stress, more suffering. But at least if you've interrupted the flow of mental defilements in the past and you've seen that, how that works, that will give you some faith, some confidence to do it again. And through practice, we can reinforce some good qualities, good habits of mind. Most people will have already, if you've heard the Buddhist teachings and reflected on them, you'll have already probably looked at your life and realized there are some aspects of life, as we say, bound up with dukkha, obstructed by dukkha, bound up with dukkha. It's not necessarily there's always stress and suffering, but it's there in the background. But when you think of the Buddha and his teachings, and the Arya Sangha already gives you something positive to focus on, and sometimes hope. It's not a bad thing. But in the development of the mind, that hope or that confidence in the Buddha has to lead on to skillful action, to effort in the practice. Because the Buddha didn't just teach us to have faith alone, believe in the Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha only, but to use that as a foundation for practice. Practicing dana, taking on precepts, committing to listening to the Dhamma, meditating and reflecting on the Dhamma until you really understand and know the Dhamma. And that faith, that confidence in the Buddha often comes when we realize we have been suffering. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's only subtle, but then you look for the way out, and that's when you turn to the Buddha and the teachings. And you look for examples of people who have done it. Ideally, living examples, people who are Kalyana Mitta, can show you the way, explain to you what the way is, provide a good example. Sometimes we have to seek Kalyana Mitta's kind of second hand through reading and listening online or hearing about other practitioners, what they've done, how they lived, how they practiced. But because we have suffering, then we seek for a way out of suffering. And hearing the Dhamma gives you that confidence, it's possible. There's always an end to suffering, because suffering itself is impermanent like everything else. It arises, it passes away. We've all had periods in our life that have been difficult, faced challenges, problems. A lot of that is just mental stuff that we bring up in our mind. Not so much physical pain and suffering, but sometimes it is. Much of the time, though, it's just dealing with a mind that's not yet trained and doesn't yet understand the Dhamma. So we create all kind of negativity and suffering mentally. Sometimes even in very good situations we can still have suffering. Accumulated suffering over the months and the years takes away your ability to enjoy something that you could enjoy, or to be at peace in a situation where you could be at peace, but it takes it away because you're caught up in whatever the problem is. Someone was asking today about women who become enlightened. Were there any female practitioners in the world today who become enlightened? So I believe there are, particularly in the Ajahn forest tradition of Thailand. There's some more well-known and some less well-known practitioners who have developed samadhi and insight. One thing they've all had in common is that they had to, like men, like monks and laymen, nuns and laywomen, the same. Everyone who's realized the Dhamma has had to face their suffering, face and try to understand where it comes from, craving and attachment, and that is an incredibly frustrating thing, practice. So any woman, just like any man who's been through suffering and practiced with it, gone beyond it, will understand very well what suffering is. There's no way around it. You have to look and learn about it, find out about it, to understand the cause so that you can abandon the cause. In the time of the Buddha, many well-known, or that we know of through the texts, bhikkhunis who became enlightened, realized Nibbana, penetrated the Four Noble Truths, and even lay women who practice well. We still know their names today, which you think about it is amazing, that somebody who lived over 2,500 years ago, we still know their name. We may even know how they practiced, how they lived and practiced the Dhamma. Perhaps that's a sign of how special or how rare also it is for people to practice until they reach Nibbana. Whether it's ordained people or lay people. Because it's rare, there are those people who are impressed enough and have faith enough in that they want to record their name. First of all, the names were memorized and then written down. Some are written down in what we now call the Tripitaka, the words of the Buddha as we have inherited. Some in what we call the Atthakatha, the commentaries. Secondary texts which are still very useful and contain lots of useful teachings and information, but are not necessarily the words of the Buddha, although they're often similar to the words of the Buddha. But people have preserved the names, the story of some of the enlightened disciples of the Buddha, all the way down to this modern era, which is an amazing thing. People who have attained power, wealth, good fortune in the world, people who have become famous leaders, powerful business people, you might say, traders, explorers. We know the names of many people in history, but we've also forgotten the names of many. Nobody knows who they were. And yet, these enlightened disciples of the Buddha, men and women who practiced and realized the Dhamma, we still know quite a lot about them. And people like to recount their stories and think about them, partly because it's a meditation. You recollect the qualities of a noble one, whether they're alive today or 2,500 years ago. It can bring up great joy, happiness, and also stimulate insight, because you listen to how they practiced and lived and what they went through, and then you may get your own inspiration and idea how to practice. So a great gift to the world. There's plenty of people in the world we can remember for not very good reasons, people you might call infamous, or who did some good but maybe also did a lot of bad as well. But these people we're remembering, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen, laywomen, they did the highest good, so they are worthy of committing to memory and recollecting, we say, bringing up to mind and then deciding to emulate how they lived. One we talked about today, the Buddhist was Patachara, is often quoted as somebody who went down to the lowest point in their life, the most deepest kind of most terrible, tragic state of suffering, and then brought themselves up to the level of arahant, all in one lifetime. Her life story is always quite inspiring. Lady Patachara, if I remember, she lived in Savatthi town, so not far from the Buddha. daughter of a wealthy family. And in those days when you're brought up, as soon as you reach of an age, then your parents plan to marry you to somebody of maybe equal standing in the community, or the son of another wealthy family. And they said Patachara was very beautiful, could have had any man she wanted maybe, but her parents had a plan for her to marry the son of another wealthy family they knew. But she actually fell in love with a servant. Fell in love with a servant in the household and just couldn't get him out of her mind. So ended up marrying the servant, much to the disappointment of the parents. And if I remember the details of the story correctly, she went to live with the servant in his family household somewhere else, in another town, and then went to live in poverty, because a servant was a servant, someone without much wealth or education, and she had to go through great hardship once she was married. But she did it for love, because she loved her partner, but she had to work the fields, haul the water from the local well. In those days, no running water, no electricity, and no Kubota tractors. You have to plough the field, dig the field, grow your crops and your veggies. She had to do everything by hand, hard work, which she wasn't used to, but she had no choice. And so she did that. And of course, because she loved her husband, not long, and she had a baby. She got pregnant. And when the time came for her to give birth, she wanted to go back to her parents' house, which is the tradition. You go home, give birth with your mother and father to help you, support you. But before she reached home, she began her journey, and straight away she got birth pains and gave birth. So she never made it home. She turned back and went to her husband's household. Gave birth, I think, out in the bush, between towns in those days was just jungle. So she gave birth in the jungle on a track somewhere and then went home. Never made it to her parents' house. So she had one baby, carried on, and not long, another year or two, and then another baby. And again she said, I'm going to go home to give birth. And she started out on her journey. And her husband accompanied her to look after her, but hadn't reached Savatthi yet. Halfway, again she had birth pains. So she would have to stop again preparing to give birth in the jungle. So her husband saw that there was a storm coming up. It's probably in the rainy season. It's going to rain heavily and she's going to give birth. So he thought he'd go and get some sticks and branches to make a simple shelter. He went off into the jungle to collect some branches, cutting a branch, and encountered a poisonous snake which straight away bit him and he died on the spot. So he didn't return. So his wife is stuck there alone, not knowing what's happened. She's got one baby already to look after, one young kid. And then gives birth on her own. Once she's given birth, got over that, in the rain, she thinks, where's the husband? She goes off to find the husband and find that he's died from a snake bite. So, very distressed, she thinks, no point going back home, might as well press on to my parents. So she walks on further with one newborn baby and one toddler with her. So, no doubt, struggling. And she has to cross a river, I forget the name, but one of those rivers which we still know the name of and know where it is in northern India, which is now flooded because of the rains, heavy rains. So she's got this problem, going to get a newborn baby and a toddler across a river, flooding river. So she wades through with her newborn baby and tells the toddler, the son, just wait on the other bank until I come back and get you. She gets across with difficulty, and then she has to go back to get her other son, so she places her newborn baby down, makes a little bed of leaves, places the baby down, turns back to go get her other child, and halfway through, she's in the flooded river. She sees an eagle flying around, hovering over her baby, which is like open to be grabbed by an eagle. So she starts shouting to try and scare away the eagle, waving her arms, shouting, because she can't get back to her baby in time, and the eagle's already there. Meanwhile, her other child, who's a bit older, sees Mum shouting and waving arms and thinks, oh, she wants me to come in. So he starts walking into the river towards her. Meanwhile, the eagle takes away the newly born baby to eat, I assume. And the son walking into the river gets swept away and drowns. So in a short space of time, she's lost her husband, her two children. So she's completely distressed. Nothing left. Nothing to do, so she carries on walking towards her parents' home. She gets to Savatthi, and she'd been away for a few years, so a few things had changed, so she asks, where's the house of her parents, who are well-known, kind of wealthy members of the community? And the person she asked says, oh, don't ask that. So she said, no, I need to know. I'm the daughter, I'm coming home. Which is the way to go? She said, no, don't ask. 3 times she asked, 3 times she refused. In the end they said, okay, we'll tell you, but you won't like it. That house was struck by lightning and collapsed and killed the 2 main occupants, her parents, last night in the storm. So that was it. Bhattacharya is completely grief-stricken, nothing left, lost everyone, everything. So she immediately loses her mind with grief and just starts wandering off. And as she wanders, she starts throwing off her clothes the way you would maybe if you're completely despairing. You sort of pull at your hair, throw your clothes and just lose touch with reality. Nothing left to live for. So she starts wandering around the countryside naked, with nowhere to go, nothing to do other than just wander. People saw her covered in mud, naked, straggly hair, and would just shoo her away. Nobody helped her. But after some time, not sure how long, but after some time, they say there's one time the Buddha was teaching, and she came across the crowd sitting, listening to the Buddha. And she walked towards the Buddha. Something attracted her, maybe the peaceful aura of the Buddha attracted her, and she wandered into the crowd. And they all started making a fuss and get out of here. This is not the place for you. They're being very cold towards her, shooing her way. But the Buddha, out of his compassion, said, no, let her come in and sit down. Either the Buddha or somebody said, oh, get her something to cover her body with. Somebody found her a blanket or a piece of cloth, so she covered up and she sat there. And the Buddha was very kind to her, and that's the first kindness she'd had since she lost all her family. So it made her interested. into what what the Buddha had to say and who the Buddha was, because he's the first person who'd been kind to her. So he had her attention now. So he taught the Dhamma, gave one of his usual teachings about the benefits of dana, sila, bhavana, teaching about the impermanence of life, which she understood very well because she'd lost everyone. And so they say she became a sotapanna, stream enterer, listening to the Dhamma. Her mind completely opened up to the Dhamma. It's like she's got nothing left to cling on to, nothing else to worry about, so she was ready to hear the Dhamma. And had deep insight listening to the Buddha. So after that, the Buddha invited her to become a bhikkhuni, a nun. She went off to the monastery. They gave her robes, ordained her, and she practiced very well. And they say the day when she became enlightened, she was coming back from alms round, just as we do. Come back from alms round and there's someone there to wash your feet. And they're washing her feet. One of the trainees, I assume, maybe a female monastic trainee, was washing her feet, and they tipped the first pot of water onto her feet to wash the dust off her feet after alms round. She was just watching how the water dribbles away, the excess water, and then gradually comes to a stop in the dirt. It goes a few feet maybe at most, and then just dries up, stops. And then the second scoop of water did the same, didn't go quite so far. The third scoop of water, again, rolled away on the dirt and then just stopped. And she had this insight into how the life of people is like that. Some people are born and they die young, some people die in middle age, some people die in old age. But in the end, everything that begins must end. Life is impermanent. So she's reflecting on that. They say she wasn't immediately enlightened, but she went back later that day, that evening, to her hut to rest. And she turned in and she had a little candle lent in. And when the candle burnt down, then she had another insight into impermanence. The wick of the candle goes down, the light goes down until there's just a little puddle of wax and then gone. And it was at that point she became Arahant and true enlightenment and into the Four Noble Truths through insight. And then she went on to become a very good teacher, skilled in the Vinaya, in the Dhamma, and very good at teaching other people who had lost loved ones, because she knew exactly how they felt and what they'd been through. She turned suffering into wisdom and compassion, which is what the Dhamma does, doesn't it? It turns something tragic, unhappy, into something good. So people like this, whether it's in the time of the Buddha or in the modern era, people who have sincerely practiced the Dhamma, they may have gone through great mental pain, sometimes great physical pain, sometimes both. But having heard the teachings, having faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, then they take that and start practicing. And often it's the Dhamma of suffering that teaches us the best, doesn't it? When things are really comfortable, we don't always learn so well because we tend to just relax and turn off. Mentally we turn off. When we've got everything we want, we go, and give up. Stop practicing mindfulness, stop reflecting on the Dhamma. We don't try very hard because we've got everything we want. Of course, that doesn't last that long. And then when things change, if we haven't prepared ourselves, often we can't cope and we suffer. But maybe the suffering can help us to urge us to practice more. And little by little, sometimes in small fits and bursts, you put effort into your practice, reflect on the Dhamma, see the impermanent nature of things, maybe understand how not to cling to your mental states of suffering, how to put up with the various pains and difficulties of life, and gradually free yourself from the attachments that cause you suffering. How quickly it will take, how quick it will occur, just depends on the person, doesn't it? How much practice they've done. If you're struggling with your practice, it seems to be taking forever to see any kind of results. Well, maybe it just means you haven't done it enough. Need to practice a bit more. Recollecting Buddha Dhamma Sangha over and over again will bring your mind up, reinforce your conviction, and set you in the direction of Nibbana. But you and I, we all have to do that practice. We're the ones who have to develop ourselves, train ourselves in the path. So I'll leave you with those reflections tonight.